Wednesday, March 18th, 2009. In the city of York, North Yorkshire, life was carrying on as usual. The cobbled streets filled with commuters, the spring air still cool, and the lights of the University of York flickering as another workday began. But for one woman, this would be her final ordinary day. Claudia Elizabeth Lawrence, a 35-year-old chef, woke up in her small terrace home on Haworth Road. Her morning looked like countless others before it. A quick breakfast, a brisk walk, and then off to work in the bustling campus kitchens. She had done this routine hundreds of times, blending into the rhythm of the city, unnoticed, unremarkable, until she became unforgettable, because by the next morning, Claudia Lawrence would vanish, and the last traces of her life would raise questions that remain unanswered to this day. Claudia was born on February 27, 1974, in Malton, a quiet market town in North Yorkshire. She was the younger daughter of Peter and Joan Lawrence. Her parents would later describe her as bright, spirited, and fiercely independent. She was close with her sister, Ollie, and had a wide network of friends who often remarked on her humor and warmth. Claudia loved fashion, nights out with friends, and a good laugh over a glass of wine. Yet at her core, she was dependable, steady, and caring, the kind of person who never missed work and always phoned home. After training as a chef, Claudia took a job at the University of York, preparing meals for students and staff. It wasn't glamorous, but she loved her work and her colleagues. Those who knew her say she was quick to smile, but also kept certain parts of her life very private. It was this balance, open and friendly on the surface, private underneath, that would later make the investigation so complex. March 18th began like any other. Claudia worked the early shift in the kitchens, chatting with her coworkers and finishing by mid-afternoon. One colleague later recalled her mood as completely normal. She seemed cheerful, untroubled, and looking forward to her days off. After work, she returned to her modest home on Haworth Road, a small 2-bedroom terrace with a tidy kitchen, a cozy living space, and little details of her personality scattered throughout. Family photographs, colorful mugs, shoes neatly by the door. That evening, she called her mother, Joan. The two spoke about Mother's Day plans, just a casual conversation between mother and daughter. Joan would later recall, she was her usual self. There was absolutely nothing unusual at all. Later, Claudia exchanged a few text messages with friends, light and casual. Her final text, sent shortly before 9 p.m., gave no hint of danger, no sign that anything was wrong. And then, silence. At 9:12 p.m., her phone was switched off. It would never be turned on again. By the next morning, Claudia was expected back in the university kitchens. She didn't arrive. She didn't call in sick. She didn't respond to texts or calls. For someone as reliable as Claudia, this was not just unusual. It was alarming. Her bed was neatly made. Her toothbrush was still in the bathroom. Her car was parked outside, untouched. Her passport and bank cards were inside the house. The only thing missing was Claudia. At first, her family hoped there was a simple explanation. Perhaps she'd gone away with a friend. Perhaps she needed space. But deep down, Joan and Peter Lawrence knew something was wrong. And when police began piecing together Claudia's last known movements, they uncovered a trail that would lead not to answers, but to secrets, suspicions, and one of the most haunting unsolved cases in modern Britain. By the morning of Thursday, March 19th, 2009, Claudia Lawrence had already crossed an invisible line between routine and alarm. She had failed to show up for her 6 a.m. shift at the University of York kitchens. At first, colleagues assumed she was running late. But Claudia wasn't the kind of person who simply overslept or ignored her responsibilities. As the hours passed, calls to her phone went unanswered. Texts remained unread. And by that evening, when she missed a planned night out with a close friend, worry turned into fear. Something was very wrong. Claudia's parents, Peter and Joan Lawrence, quickly sensed the gravity of the situation. Joan described her growing unease. I knew immediately this wasn't like her. Claudia would never just disappear, not without telling someone. Peter, a retired solicitor, was equally alarmed. He urged police to take immediate action, pressing them to treat Claudia as a missing person from the very start. That first night, without Claudia, stretched on in unbearable silence. The Lawrence family's world had tilted into panic. North Yorkshire police officially opened a missing person inquiry on Friday, March 20th. Officers began by searching Claudia's small terrace home on Haworth Road. What they found was eerie in its normality. The house was tidy and untouched. Her bed was neatly made. Her handbag, bank cards, and passport were still there. Her car sat parked outside. There were no signs of forced entry. No obvious struggle. No indication that she had planned to leave. The only thing missing was Claudia and her mobile phone, which records showed had been switched off at 9:12 p.m. on March 18th. Almost immediately after her last text message, police canvassed the area, searching for witnesses. And they quickly discovered something that added to the mystery. Several neighbors recalled seeing Claudia walking home from work on March 18th. CCTV footage confirmed she had arrived safely, but after 9 p.m., her trail went cold. Then came the first strange clue. Footage from the early hours of March 19th showed a man seen near Claudia's home, carrying a bag and walking with what appeared to be an unusual gait. Detectives could never identify him, and his role, if any, in Claudia's disappearance remains unknown. As news spread, the disappearance of Claudia Lawrence dominated headlines across Britain. A young, vibrant woman vanishing without trace in a historic English city was a kind of story that captured the public's imagination and fear. Posters went up across York. Television crews camped outside the Lawrence family home. Journalists began digging into Claudia's life, eager for any detail that might explain the mystery. But for Peter and Joan, this wasn't a headline. It was their daughter. Joan pleaded through the cameras. "Please, Claudia, if you can hear this, just come home. We only want to know that you are safe." Her voice trembled. It was a voice of a mother who already feared the worst. Within days, detectives announced that Claudia's case was now being treated as a potential abduction. The evidence suggested she had either left her home willingly with someone she knew or been taken against her will. Detective Superintendent Ray Galloway, who led the investigation, admitted grimly, "The fact that Claudia's car, passport, and bank cards remain at her home is deeply concerning. This is now a suspected crime." For the Lawrence family, those words confirmed what their hearts already knew. But as investigators dug deeper, they would uncover a side of Claudia's life that few outside her closest circle knew about. A side filled with secrecy, complicated relationships, and unanswered questions. And soon, the nation's sympathy for a missing young woman would be clouded by whispers of scandal, whispers that threatened to overshadow the desperate search for truth. As the days turned into weeks, the search for Claudia Lawrence took on a new intensity. Posters with her smiling face were plastered across York. Volunteers joined police in door-to-door searches. News anchors spoke her name nightly. But behind the scenes, the investigation was already moving into far more complicated territory. Detectives began to ask a different kind of question. Who was Claudia Lawrence, really? It started with whispers, then became headlines. Claudia, police revealed, had a more complicated personal life than many first believed. Though she lived alone in her modest terrace house, Claudia had been linked to several relationships, some casual, some secret, and some involving men who were married or already in relationships. For investigators, these details were not simply gossip. They were potential motives, potential leads, and potential explanations for why Claudia had vanished so suddenly. Detective Superintendent Ray Galloway made it clear, "We believe the key to Claudia's disappearance lies within her lifestyle and relationships. We need anyone with knowledge of her private life to come forward." It was a statement that ignited a storm. At first, the nation had rallied around Claudia, a beloved daughter, a dedicated chef, an innocent victim. But now, tabloids seized on her private life. Headlines grew sensational. Secret affairs, the double life of Claudia Lawrence. For Claudia's family, this was a second trauma. Her father, Peter, publicly defended her dignity, insisting that whatever her relationships had been, she was still the victim of a crime. "My daughter's personal life is irrelevant. What matters is finding her." But the damage was done. The public's view of Claudia began to shift, from innocent to complicated, from victim to subject of scrutiny. Police explored every possible angle. Was Claudia harmed by someone jealous? By someone she had been secretly involved with? Or had she stumbled into something darker, something beyond her personal circle? Detectives interviewed ex-partners, co-workers, and acquaintances. They studied her phone records, hoping to find that one crucial call or message. But the trail remained frustratingly cold. Investigators kept circling back to the unidentified man on CCTV, the one spotted near Claudia's home in the early hours of March 19th, carrying a bag and walking with an unusual gait. Was he connected? Was he a neighbor? Or was he entirely unrelated? Despite repeated appeals, the man never came forward. Neither did anyone who could identify him. The image of that blurred figure became an unsettling symbol of the case, a shadow that might hold the answer or might mean nothing at all. While the investigation churned on, Claudia's family was left in torment. Joan continued to appeal on television, begging her daughter, or anyone who knew where she was, to come forward. Peter became the public face of the campaign for justice. Calm, articulate, but visibly broken, he fought to keep his daughter's story alive, even as the media seemed more interested in her private life than her disappearance. He later reflected, it was as though Claudia herself was being put on trial, rather than those who might have harmed her. Months passed. Leads came and went. Witnesses were questioned, then dismissed. Suspicions rose, then fell apart. But detectives remained convinced. Claudia had been murdered. They just needed to find out by whom. And as pressure mounted, police began to make arrests. By 2010, more than a year after Claudia Lawrence had vanished, police made their first major move. Several men were arrested on suspicion of murder. Each arrest brought a wave of hope that finally the nightmare might end, that Claudia's family might learn the truth. But each time, those hopes were shattered. No charges were ever brought. The evidence was never strong enough. One by one, the men were released, and with each release, the case seemed to grow colder. The arrests left scars not only on Claudia's family, but also on her community. Men who had once been friends or acquaintances suddenly found their names splashed across headlines as potential killers. Though none were ever convicted, the cloud of suspicion lingered. Some lives were never the same again. Detectives admitted they were working with fragments, rumors, half-truths, and tenuous links. The smoking gun, the undeniable proof, always seemed just out of reach. In 2013, for years after Claudia disappeared, the case was formally reclassified as a suspected murder inquiry. Detectives stated what many already feared. Claudia was not simply missing. She was dead. But where was her body? Who had taken her life? By 2015, 6 years on, police conducted fresh searches around York, including a fishing lake and woodland areas. Specialist teams scoured the ground. Divers searched the waters. But nothing was found. Another lead. Another dead end. In 2019, a decade after Claudia's disappearance, police announced a major review of the case. Forensic teams re-examined her home, using advanced techniques that hadn't been available in 2009. Neighbors reported seeing investigators digging, collecting samples, even tearing into walls and floors. Whispers of a breakthrough spread quickly, but once again, there was no dramatic revelation, no arrest, no closure. Through it all, Claudia's father, Peter Lawrence, became the tireless campaigner for his daughter's case. He spoke in Parliament. He pushed for reforms to help families of missing people, and he refused to let Claudia's name fade from the public's memory. But the toll was devastating. In February 2021, Peter Lawrence passed away at the age of 74, without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. For many, his death symbolized the tragedy of the case, a father who gave everything for answers and left this world with none. Today, more than a decade later, the disappearance of Claudia Lawrence remains unsolved. No body has ever been found. No one has ever been charged. And the questions that haunted York in 2009 still remain. Did Claudia leave her home willingly that night? Was she betrayed by someone she trusted? Or was she the victim of a crime far more random and far more terrifying? We may never know. But what we do know is this. Behind the headlines, behind the speculation, Claudia was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. A woman whose life was cut short, whose story remains unfinished. And until answers are found, the silence of that March night in 2009 will echo on, a reminder of a mystery that refuses to fade. This is a story of Claudia Lawrence. Not just a missing person, but a haunting question that still lingers. What happened to her? And why has the truth remained hidden for so long?